So when did you start getting in the medical field?
Right now, so I wanted to have children because I've always had the love for children. And I knew I wanted to start having kids, and working as a broker, it wasn't conducive to that. I was in the office at 6 a.m., leaving at sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning. And so I decided to transition to the pharmaceutical industry because it was easier. It was more 9 to 5, manage your accounts and go home
So you started as a sales rep
as a sales rep.
for a pharmaceutical company,
Yes.
selling medical equipment
Medical supply. No, I was selling products like pharmaceutical products, medication.
to doctors.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't. Do you need to? You don't need a degree for that, though, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you have to be licensed?
Only hire you. They will only hire you if you have a degree.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't need a degree for it, but you're not getting hired if you don't have one.
Just a college degree, though.
A college.
There's no specific degree for that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So now you're selling. Okay. So now you go into selling stuff to doctors. You're going all across to different doctors in your network, and you're trying to pitch them, and you're like waiting for them to get out of surgery, stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the process.
Yeah.
I know a few people. So you become successful in that.
Yes.
You like rise up the ranks,
I did.
top salesperson type person.
I was in number one and number two. I was with the first company. I was number one. I was there for 3 years. And then I went with the second company. I was back and forth 1 and 2 for the 8 years that I was in the industry.
What made you, what was your sales thing that made you outstanding? Because sales is extremely difficult. Like, what did you do to make sure that you were successful?
I built relationships. So I got to the point where I knew that the first 6 to 8 months, I gun it as gun it as you can imagine. So I was there 8 o'clock in the morning. I didn't leave until 6 p.m., which is really long hours for a pharmaceutical salesperson, because I knew once I built a relationship with the doctors, now I didn't have to work so hard. Now I call them on the cell phones, hey, I'm coming by. And they say, all right, come through the back door. Where most sales reps, they will have to wait for an hour, and then it'll take you forever to see people. Where in my day, I can see 20, 30 doctors because I had relationships with these people. And that's just building relationships. And sales is pretty much building relationships.
How'd you build the relationships?
My financial background, most doctors aren't really business-oriented people. They're not investors. So they always wanted to have conversations with me about their portfolios, what they're investing in, how to invest. And then I started, I was doing a lot of real estate flips at the time. And they were always asking me, so what next? What's next? And so that's how I built. And I ended up becoming friends with most of my doctors, to the point where my partner, she said to me one day, she said, all the doctors love you. I have like 2, and you have like all of them. And it's simply because I know how to maintain relationships, build them, and be able to bring value. And I think bringing value to every person's lives, whether it's your friends, your family, whether it's someone you work with, or someone you're simply engaging with, it makes a ginormous difference in places that you'll go.
You sound like, obviously you've been successful at each level, whether it was from athletics, when you were a stockbroker, to pharmaceuticals, and then to the medical equipment. What made you transition from being in finance to being in pharmaceuticals, right? Was it an issue of like, this isn't what I want to do, this is not the path I want to continue going? Was it a financial decision, like there's more opportunity for me to make more money in this field? Like what was the deciding factor to say, I'm leaving this behind, I'm going to start something different?
I wanted to start having children.
Okay.
And I knew that I didn't have time. To be able to give to children, because being a broker is not conducive to that. And then the other reason was, as a broker, you have to go find your clients. You got to qualify them. You got to be able to determine within 30 seconds or a minute if this person have money or are they going to waste your time. In the pharmaceutical sales, they give you the clients. So I'm like, they give you the clients, that's all. And that was like a slam dunk, because if I get the clients, I can sell to the clients. And so those were my reasons for transitioning.
Gotcha.
Oh, you didn't have to like cold call? You had a book of business that was given to you?
It's not a book of business, it's the clients. So these are the doctors who prescribe XYZ, and whether I'm launching a new drug or they're specific to, like, I was a cardiopulmonary specialist when I finished, so cardiologist or pulmonary. And they give you those clients. So you go and see them and you give them all the details. One of the methodologies in which I used is I always find studies that were outside of the drugs that I was selling, so that they were value. I brought more value to just than simply just talking about the drugs that I was selling. And we end up having stimulating conversation in reference to the disease state and how to benefit the patients and why they should use it. And so those were the difference between myself and I believe some of the other salespeople.
So, all right. So after that, then you get into your own business?
Yes.
So walk us through that.
So I got promoted every year. So every December seemed like that was my month. And so December is my month. I got promoted to various things. And the last promotion I had was in California. So at the time, I had finished my master's in business administration and I was in the process of finishing my doctorate. Usually when you're promoted, they interview you. They decided not to interview me because I was number one in the company. I was rep of the year. I was rookie of the year, all blah, blah, blah. And the manager hired me based on my accolades. I got to California. He approved everything. I got to California. He looked at me. We had lunch and he says, "Oh, I didn't know you were Black." And I said, "Oh yeah, I am." I didn't think anything of it because the company had been amazing up in this point and I had not experienced any level of racism at this point. So I was like, okay. Right after that, in less than a day, he started disapproving all the things that were approved for me to move and transition. And when he did that, when he started doing that, I was like, why am I working for someone when I have all these degrees and I want to start my own business? I didn't want to start it while I was doing my doctorate because I knew it would have been more difficult. But he forced me to get to the point where I started it. So I started a medical recruiting company because I said, I know doctors and I know how to place them in different jobs. And so I started that business when I transitioned. And so that was my first business.
And what was the first business?
Medical recruiting.
What does that entail? Like for the audience who may not understand what that actually means.
So basically, I was a headhunter. So I would contract with hospitals, medical practice across the country. Mm-hmm. And I would find them doctors to fill the roles for the hospitals or the medical practices. And I'll negotiate their contracts. I schedule site visits there and negotiate the contract, make sure that the employer and the employee are happy, and then they transition.
And then you get a piece of that.
And then I get a fee for it.
Like 20%, 10%?
Sometimes it's percentage. So sometimes it ranges between 20 and 30%, but most of medical recruiting is usually between $20,000 and $50,000 per placement, depending on the specialty.
What age are we at this point?
At this point, we are at 30.
At 30?
Yeah.
All right, so we're at 22 with the youngest stockbroker. At 30, we started our own business. Starting to become lucrative. Pretty lucrative.
Yes.
How are you?
Yes.
I mean, you've always been, it seems, pretty disciplined with money. How are you now handling with the success of having money and having it around, I guess, people, especially from our culture, who are not used to having money and definitely having family members who don't have it? How are you dealing with that?
Then or now?
Then. Well,
then.
Now. We're going to get to now.
Then the way that and I'm like this right now.
Yeah.
I could have 200 accounts. Yeah. There's one account that matters. If that account is low, I don't have any money. I've always been like that. So if something goes in an investment account, it means it can never be touched. It touched only to change the investment vehicles, but not to be touched to spend. And so during that time, I was broke. I was making $800,000 a year plus, but I was still broke. That wasn't enough money for me to spend. And I drove a moderate car. Obviously, I own a house because you have to invest in making sure you own a home. And I drove a Camry, and they were like, "You should buy a Benz." I'm like, "For what? I don't want to buy a Benz. You buy a Benz, which is my dream car, when I have my dream house. And the dream house must come first, and then dream car comes second." And so I've always had that mind frame. And
I like that. I got 800,000 and I'm broke. It's a mentality. It's like when we talk about people changing their zero, right? A lot of people's zero is like when they have no money in their account. Mm-hmm. Some people will say, like, if I have $2,000, if I go anything less than that, I'm broke. You started was it always that goal? Like, if it's a 800,000 or it's $1 million, like the goal was always to have that level as the broke?
Not really. I mean, right now, I still don't think I have enough money.
Interesting.
I've always got to have that mind frame. There's I feel like there's so much more that I could always do. The way that I have been with money, just extremely disciplined when it comes to, and I knew investment. So I knew how to invest it, what to invest in, how to invest it. For example, when I was in the pharmaceutical industry, they were paying for my degrees. So what I did, I took my student loans and I flipped houses during the market when it was doing great. So I made a lot of money during that time. And every single dime I make goes to my investment account. Nothing was ever spent. I've never spent, when I was a broker, a commission or bonus, which was pretty much almost all what you make. When I was in the pharmaceutical industry, there was never a bonus was ever spent because this bonus is supposed to be saved. It's supposed to be invested for later on. And so I've always kind of held that, and I've been like that from when I was little.